Hey, what's up, everybody? We are back again, and today, yeah, why not? Let's talk about SosMula. Now, when people first started to recommend this topic to me about 4 months ago, I couldn't really wrap my head around why people would want yet another video on SosMula. I mean, I understand I kind of built my channel off of making videos about him in the morgue. The first video that I had that really popped off was about the many beefs of SosMula, so maybe people just want to see my continuing opinion on him, but I felt like the last video that I did on him was pretty final. I mean, after all, everything had fallen apart with City Morgue. He had gotten dropped by his label, meaning that he no longer had a big industry machine behind him, and it seemed like he was gonna fall more and more into obscurity as the years went on. And it's not like I was trying to say that his career was gonna be over forever. It was more so that I thought that he was on the downtrend and that there wouldn't really be a whole lot more to say in the following years. However, I do have to say, similarly to Dave Blunt's and Little Wop, SosMula actually has surprised me because he seems to be going in a very interesting direction that does seem worth talking about. But before we get into the new stuff that he's been doing, I think it's important to go a little bit back in time to right after the morgue fell apart, kind of set the stage for where his career was at and how he's somewhat been able to bounce back from that. Now, to start things off, the 2020s have been a very weird decade for SosMula overall, which kind of feels like a weird thing to say considering that most of his career has taken place in the 2020s, with the morgue only really finding fame around the very late 2010s. I mean, you could say that they were building up momentum throughout 2017 and 2018, but I would say that 2019 was really the year that they popped off and started to do big numbers. But it was actually during that phase when they were building themselves up that SosMula was really shining. I mean, believe it or not, back in the SoundCloud days, a lot of people saw SosMula as the better rapper. Zillakami would often start off, set the tone, get the aggression going, and the vibe that the song would have throughout, and then SosMula would come in at the end with an amazing verse and absolutely take over. And at first, I believe this is why SosMula would always go second, because he was the more seasoned rapper. He had a lot more experience with making music, with at that point having over 10 years in the game, so they would get Zilla to come in, kind of do his thing, and then have Sos finish it off. However, this entire dynamic was unfortunately short-lived and kind of got lost to history after they got signed to Republic Records, because once they started putting out official albums, really giving the mainstream a taste of what they were like, it was very different. And it's not that I'm trying to say that SosMula was having bad verses when they first got signed to the label, it's more so that the label was trying to push him to the side and position Zillakami as the main star, which had to put Sos in kind of a weird position, because after all, he had been in the rap game for a decade at this point, so getting any motion, a fan base, people actually pulling up to their shows and really caring about what they were doing had to feel pretty good. But at the same time, becoming a sidekick to somebody a decade younger than you also had to be kind of weird, and you can kind of see this dynamic throughout all of the interviews that they did during their rise to fame. Sos always seemed very appreciative of everything that he had gained, the fan base that they had, and he wanted to make sure that everybody knew that he really cared that the fans were there, whereas Zillakami didn't give a shit about any of that. Which does make sense when you consider how they both got famous. Like I said, I don't want to repeat myself over and over again, but Sos had been in the game for a very long time, so when he finally was able to pop off, it meant a lot to him, whereas Zillakami got famous within about 2 years after starting to rap, so being famous kind of felt like the regular to him, and you would hear Zillakami complain about being famous over and over and over again, whereas Sos never really seemed to have a whole lot of bad things to say about it. And I think the best example you can find of their dynamic is watching the Genius interview that they did for 33rd Black Glass, where Zillakami is shitting on Thrax and saying that he makes bad beats, whereas SosMula is kind of trying to say, well, he had a lot of beats, we had a lot to pick from, you know, kind of trying to say, hey man, maybe don't shit on our main producer.
We was in Muddy Studio, Thrax played a beat, and I hated it. And
We had a bunch of beats that day.
yeah, all of them were trash, and this was like the least trash one.
Oh, and for anybody who's not in the know, Thrax was actually the third member of City Morgue back when they got started. He was their producer, he made a lot of the early beats, but as time went on, he eventually got edged out and was no longer part of the project. For years, we've wondered why exactly he got pushed out of the group, but now looking back on things, it's very clear to see that him and Zillakami were the ones who had issues with each other, and it wasn't anything between him and Sos. But that's besides the point, we'll get back to that a little bit later on. For now, this is basically the dynamic that they had. They were doing big time shows, SosMula was getting the fame that he always wanted, but he was still very much in the shadow of Zillakami, so much so that when he went to No Jumper and did an interview with them, they would call it the Zillakami interview instead of the Zillakami and SosMula interview.
Sir, Bearwoods. We're doing the Zillakami interview today. Much requested. People have been asking for this for well over a year now. How you doing, bro?
I'm doing good.
Bruh.
I mean, don't get me wrong, in the title it says that, but Adam 22 introduced it as a Zilla Kami interview. And that could be from poor communication from Righteous P not saying, hey, this is my group right here, it's SosMula and Zilla, or maybe Adam 22 only knew about Zilla because of 6ix9ine, but either way, pretty disrespectful. But during this period in the Volume 1 era, it seems like most fans mostly overlooked SosMula. It wasn't like they outright disliked him or wanted him to not be part of the group, it was more so, oh, okay, Sos is here, that's fine, but I'm not really going to show up for him. However, that would unfortunately shift once Volume 2 came out, with a lot of people openly hating SosMula, saying that his verses really ruined the project, and I think this comes down to the fact that that album really wasn't very aggressive and was more so emotional. And while SosMula definitely tried his best to fit the vibe of that project, it's very hard to take him seriously with the voice that he has and the way that he delivers things, which is very unfortunate because if you listen to Sos's actual verses and what he's saying, he actually is talking about something that he went through, whereas Zilla Kami is basically vaguely talking about depression and crying into a drain and blah blah blah, whereas SosMula is talking about losing friends in the hood and, well, having PTSD. However, the unfortunate part is that it came out like this. I got PTSD, I always keep a gun. And this is where SosMula hate was really born, with a lot of fans saying that SosMula adds absolutely nothing to the music, and if anything, he actually actively takes away with it with his annoying ad-libs and basically only going sleazy instead of actually adding anything. Which I don't feel like is very accurate, but that's kind of the opinion that people would have in the following years. After that, Toxic Boogaloo would come out, and this is really where my opinion on SosMula began to shift. I'm not sure if the label was less hands-on with this project, or maybe there wasn't as much pressure put on it because it was a mixtape, but it seemed like SosMula was finally able to show up and show out, and he did an amazing job. I would say on every single song off of this project, he's at least on par with Zilla Kami, if not actively doing better than him. I would say on most songs, he's actually doing better than Zilla. And just overall, Toxic Boogaloo really felt like a breath of fresh air for the Morgue, and it seemed like they were going to start going in a better direction. But unfortunately after that, we got City Morgue Volume 3, Bottom of the Barrel. Now, all things considered, this project actually isn't that bad if you listen through it. I think it's more so the time that it came out and the way that it came out that really made people actively dislike it. I mean, after all, at this point, a lot of fans were more focused on their solo projects, with Zilla Kami dropping Dogboy in October 2021 and this project coming out the very next month. And as disappointing as I personally found Dogboy, a lot of people really thought this was going to be the future of Zilla Kami's career. He had gotten a Lil Uzi feature, it seemed like he was finally starting to break through, and I think a lot of people were ready for him to retire from the Morgue. So for Volume 3 to come out and basically be a watered down version of Volume 1 without a whole lot new to offer was a pretty big disappointment to a lot of fans. However, you kind of got to look at this from an outside perspective. It takes a long time to make an album. I mean, especially if you're under a label, you got to get all the beats approved, you got to make sure that everything's right legally, and then you got to make sure the label's okay with the time that you're dropping it and the perfect window when none of their other artists are going to be dropping projects. There's a lot that goes into it, and I believe the reason that things ended up like this is because when Volume 1 came out, people really liked it. It was very aggressive, it was very in tune with the Morgue that we all knew and loved, and then when Volume 2 came out, they kind of switched it up too much and kind of got too far away from what people really appreciated about their music. So by the time that Volume 3 came out, they wanted to play it safe and kind of get back to that original sound, but at that point, people now wanted something new, so they were kind of damned if they did, damned if they didn't. However, during the time that all of this was going on, most people were overlooking the fact that SosMula had also put out his first ever solo project called 13 Songs to Die To, which in my opinion is a really great album. We were starting to see SosMula kind of break into a new style on the deluxe version of Volume 2, with him kind of going into that Cardi type sound, although I would say that even though it definitely takes the bones from Cardi's style, it's very, very different. Although despite my thoughts on it, I think this made a lot of fans nervous, thinking that SosMula was going to try to ride a trend that he was too old to really understand, but by the time this project came out, I really think he was able to prove to everybody that he had something going for him. And this is right around the time that I began to prefer SosMula to Zilla Kami, as after all, Dogboy was a perfectly fine album. It's basically what I expected to get from Zilla Kami. However, at that point, I wasn't looking for a fine project. I was looking for Zilla Kami's version of 17, the project that would really break him through into the mainstream and prove to everybody that he was a very talented artist, but instead, well, we got mid. Basically, I was expecting way too much from Zilla Kami, but when it came to SosMula, I really wasn't expecting anything. Honestly, I couldn't even wrap my head around what a solo project from SosMula would sound like. I wasn't sure if it was just going to be the same style that he ran with when he was with the Morgue, and if that's what it was going to be, I definitely wasn't going to be listening. But when I did finally give it a listen, I was completely blown away. And of course, I was very excited to see what would happen next. Although I do feel like 2021 was the last year that City Morgue was kind of moving as a cohesive unit. After that, they definitely were together in concept, but it felt like they were moving farther and farther apart. There was constant rumors that they were going to break up, go in different directions. You actually saw SosMula try to start up his own group called Cleanup Crew, as well as creating his own clothing brand called Fuck the 2000s. It really felt like Sos was trying to do anything he could to break away from City Morgue, not because he hated the group or didn't feel like it represented him anymore, but more so because he wanted to be his own man and his own artist. Although unfortunately, every time he went to do an interview, he would get the same question over and over again. Hey man, didn't you used to work with 6ix9ine? What do you think about 6ix9ine? Do you and 6ix9ine have beef? Which had to get very tiresome very fast. I mean, first of all, him and 6ix9ine were never even that close. 6ix9ine was basically out of the group by the time that SosMula was coming in, not to mention it had been 4 years at this point, so hearing that same question about somebody that you dislike and honestly probably don't even give that much of a shit about anymore would really get on your nerves. But this kind of made it seem like SosMula was in the shadow of a shadow, because Zilla Kami was in 6ix9ine's shadow, and then he was in Zilla's shadow, and while Zilla was starting to break out of that shadow, SosMula kind of wasn't. Shadow. Okay, there, I said it again. And at this point, it felt like that was the only way that things were gonna go. I mean, after all, Zilla Kami was getting ready to drop Audio Creep, which was gonna be his big mainstream project that was gonna break him through and prove to everybody that he was a very talented artist, and SosMula was continuing to drop his own solo projects to very little fanfare. And with him being in his mid-30s, it kind of made sense that he would ride out the City Morgue trend as much as he could, make as much money as he was able to off his shows, and then finally ride off into the sunset as a retired artist. But you can tell that that's not what Sos wanted to do, because he actually had one thing that Zilla Kami didn't: ambition. He really wanted to break out of that shadow, and eventually he would actually begin to do that. Now, in my opinion, Too High to Die is nowhere near as good as 13 Songs to Die To. I think it really suffers from its bloated length, with 20 songs and most of them being solos, with only one feature from Little Tracy. By comparison, 13 Songs to Die To had 7 features on it, and while some people would say that's way too much, I think it's a good thing for Sos to really experiment with different people and different styles, because a whole project of the same Cardi type flow is honestly pretty boring. Although I really don't think this was Sos's fault. I think the label wasn't really putting much attention on him. They were more so focusing on the next project from the Morgue as well as Zilla Kami's solo stuff, because there definitely were features that could have been on this project. I mean, there was rumors that he had a song with Lil Durk. He also had another song with Kim Dracula that could have been put on there. Him and Zaman had another song together. Not to mention, he also had a feature from Kid Trunks, which probably isn't the most poppin' rapper in the world, but still it could have helped the project out, and even Zilla Kami didn't appear on it. Now, this was probably because SosMula was attempting to set himself apart from the Morgue, so having Zilla Kami on this project as a feature would only once again put him back in that shadow, but I feel like if this was really his attempt to make it as a solo artist, it wasn't a very good attempt. And after that, he went right back to being with the Morgue, with them finally putting out their next project, My Bloody America. And I think I speak for everybody when I say this project was a huge disappointment. If City Morgue Volume 3 was a watered down version of Volume 1, well, Volume 4 is a watered down version of Volume 3. There's really no reason to listen to this project compared to any of their other ones. It's very boring, it's the same exact style that they've been running with for the past half a decade at this point, and overall, just not good. Listen to Haha Waco, that's the best song off of the entire project and was also the lead single, and besides that, there's no reason to ever touch this piece of shit again. And after it finally came out, the Morgue had announced that they were finally going to be breaking up. One final tour for this project, and then after that, they were officially going to be solo artists. However, everything would change in 2024 when Zilla Kami's next solo project, Audio Creep, ended up getting leaked by a hacker, and he would immediately take to his Instagram livestream to cry about it, with him basically saying that he was done with music, he was going to try to get SosMula as popping as he could, and then he was going to fade away, which honestly makes a lot of sense when you see how hard he was trying in the past 3 years, which is to say not at all. And I believe this is probably the reason why City Morgue didn't break up right there and then, because after all, Zilla Kami no longer had a solo project to fall back on. I mean, he still could have put it out, but it probably would have been severely hurt by the leaks. And well, SosMula was still kind of in a weird spot where he was coming into his own, but he wasn't fully formed. So they decided they were going to do one final project to City Morgue, which they named Bombs in the Mail, meant to be a sequel to their very first mixtape from 2018 called Be Be Patient, which would be a heavy order to fill because in my opinion, even though it's only 3 songs, Be Patient is their best body of work to date. And before they even ended up putting out this mixtape, they would immediately announce a tour as well as a line of merch, basically trying to make as much money as they could off of City Morgue before it was finally over, which I'm not going to fault them for. I mean, get your bags, kings, I guess. I don't know. And to be honest with you, this tour seemed very lackluster. It might have been a last minute thing that they set up because the venues seemed very small, cramped, their mics weren't working half of the time, and just overall it seemed like they had kind of fallen from their initial heights. So with City Morgue starting to lose clout and die out, now was the time that SosMula really had to break through with his final solo project under the label known as Sleez Religion, which was meant to be an absolutely packed 30-song album with big-time features that would finally prove to the world that SosMula was an artist to be respected. I mean, this project was even gonna have features from Riff Raff, not to mention a lot of people were assuming that that little Dirk feature would finally get cleared and placed on the album as well, and surprisingly, a lot of people were super hyped for this album to finally come out. When it came to 13 Songs to Die To and Too High to Die, it seemed like there was very little fanfare and very little hype leading up to their release, but when it came to Sleez Religion, people really wanted to see what SosMula had to offer. But unfortunately, everything began to go wrong. There would be delay after delay after delay, with him announcing that it would be out this month, and then it would be out the next month if he got so many comments. He would release a single, and then go on for 3 more months without putting out a second one. The rollout was an absolute nightmare, and on top of that, unfortunately, the Riff Raff features weren't cleared, meaning that he lost a pretty big cosign that he could have had. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, well, you already know what happened. The allegations would come out against Zillakami, he would immediately lose his next tour, he would lose his Zumi sponsorship, and he would get dropped from the label, which once again put Sos in a very terrible spot. I mean, after all, he had to put this project out. This project was going to prove to everybody that he was really a respectable artist, but at the same time, what was he going to do when his partner in crime got accused of the worst crimes that somebody can get accused of? Not to mention that one bar about me and Zilla fuck the same hoes, which I really hope is not true for Sosa's sake. But that's besides the point. As this entire situation went down and Zillakami would try desperately to save face, SosMula would stay completely silent on everything, not talking about it and staying the course by dropping another clothing line for Sleez Religion. And while a lot of people were clowning on him for this at the time, I definitely think this was the right choice to make. I mean, what kind of statement could he make that would have sounded good? If he had said that he stood with Zillakami, that would have been a very bad look. If he had said that he was no longer going to work with Zillakami, a bunch of City Morgue fans would be very upset, saying that he betrayed his best friend, which is extremely stupid because after all, Zillakami had been actively sabotaging their careers throughout the entire thing, and with this coming out, if I was Sos, I'd be incredibly pissed. I mean, after all, you're gonna throw away everything we built up because you want to fuck with underage girls? Yeah, fuck you, dude. And as the dust finally settled about a month after everything went down, SosMula would finally drop Sleez Religion. And overall, I think it did pretty well for him. I think the fans that were already tapped in with him really appreciated it. A lot of people look at it as his best project ever, which I don't really agree with. I still think that 13 Songs to Die To is very hard to top, but that's not to say that Sleez Religion is a bad project at all. It's very good. And considering just how tainted their entire reputation was at this point, I think it doing as well as it did was honestly a miracle. Although unfortunately immediately after that, he would then be dropped by the label as well. Now it's unclear if their label deal just happened to be up at this point, so that's why they got dropped, or maybe they dropped him because after all, City Morgue wasn't going to be a group anymore, and they didn't really want to keep Sos on as a solo artist. And this definitely could have been the death of his entire career. I mean, the label left him behind. What was he going to do? Well, he would immediately capitalize off the hype that Sleez Religion was getting by announcing a new project called Camp Crystal Lake. And honestly, I think this is the quickest that SosMula ever announced a follow-up project after an album drop. And while at the time I saw this as kind of a desperate move to try to keep relevancy, I actually do think it's kind of a good thing that he got dropped from the label, because after all, when it came to Zillakami, the label was a good thing for him. He's such a lazy piece of shit that he would never drop music if he wasn't forced to. Whereas SosMula really seemed like he wanted to drop non-stop. I mean, after all, he said that he recorded over 2,000 songs during the pandemic, so with the chains of the label off of him, he'd finally be able to drop the way that he wanted to. And he would immediately start showing videos of him in the studio, recording songs off of the project. He was dropping music videos and singles, and it seemed like Camp Crystal Lake was going to come out within only a few months. Although there was some issues that came from from SosMula now being an independent artist, as some of his music videos were getting age restricted, it seemed like he really didn't have a good grasp on the way that the internet worked, and honestly, with him being the age that he is, he probably needed somebody to help him out. But the plus side of this is that he would start up his own Discord server and start actively talking to fans, which is something that we never really seen him do during the City Morgue era, so I think a lot of people really appreciated how much love he was showing to them. And you could kind of read this as SosMula trying to save face and make sure that his fan base stays around him, but I feel like SosMula always appreciated the fans more than Zilla, so I wouldn't really say that he's selling out by doing this. On top of that, he would even leak some of his own music in the Discord server, which would lead a lot of people to head to me and ask, what do you think he's doing? Well, I think he's trying to show love to you guys, honestly. They're probably songs that he never really meant to come out or wanted to release in any commercial fashion, but he still wanted you guys to hear the music, so he leaked it for everybody to listen to. Honestly, once again, a very cool thing for an artist to do. Overall, it seems like him getting dropped from the label has been a very positive thing. Not to mention, we've also started to see him shift away from trap metal into a more horrorcore type of sound, which is what I predicted in the previous video, saying that SosMula was probably going to try to go more into that Juggalo crowd, as after all, that fan base absolutely loves him, and he honestly fits a lot better with them than anybody in the trap metal community. But he kind of surprised me at the same time, because while he definitely is leaning more into that Juggalo side of things, he's also recently managed to get on All But Six's third volume, which is a pretty impressive cosign, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, yes, Puya is a creepy little weirdo, but I can't lie and tell you that All But Six isn't popping. There's a bunch of artists on that label who are really starting to take over, and I think if you're in this specific lane, that's really the group that you want to be around. I mean, you also got G59, but let's be honest, unless you got nepotism, you're probably not going to be able to be part of that label, so All But Six is probably the right choice. Not to mention, this song is also another collaboration with Fat Nick, which is a duo that I can really get behind. I mean, after all, I think Fat Nick should leave Puya behind and then go work with Sos. Sos has already left Zilla behind, and then, you know, Puya and Zilla can have each other because they're both into the same freaky ass shit. Allegedly, of course, allegedly. Okay, sorry, this is a positive video, but it goes to show that SosMula forming all these connections over the years really has started to pay off, because he's now able to work with bigger artists, all because, well, he showed love to them early on. And to make things even better, on top of that massive cosign, SosMula has also managed to sign a brand new deal with an artist going by the name of Ricky Hill. Now, if you're not aware of this guy, I wouldn't necessarily blame you. He's not super popping or anything, but he is the son of Tommy Hilfiger, so he definitely has a lot of money. And I honestly think that he's the perfect match for SosMula. The two of them seem to get along really well, and they're both the same type of weird, so honestly, I think if anybody's going to manage SosMula, I think Ricky Hill is the best option. And in fact, the two of them are actually in a cabin in the woods right now recording new music. It seems like SosMula is really happy for the first time in his life. When he was working with City Morgue, all he was doing was drinking lean and talking about how he wanted to end himself, but now he seems like he's actually enjoying making music again. And I'm honestly pretty happy to see it as well. I mean, I know a lot of people also want to shit on SosMula for being part of City Morgue, being around those people and never speaking on it, but I honestly feel like he probably never knew any of that was going on. I'm not saying he's a victim in any way, but you do have to consider the fact that he almost lost 10 years of work overnight for something that he didn't even do, so seeing him being able to bounce back is pretty nice to see. I think he deserves it after all the work that he put in. And here's hoping that SosMula continues to thrive. I mean, he even recently worked with Thrax, which is really cool, and also kind of proves my theory that the whole issue was between Zilla and Thrax and had nothing to do with Sos. So seeing the two of them work together again feels right. It's like the world is healing. It's like Zilla Kami was really the issue overall. But let's not talk about him again. Let's finally leave that guy in the past once and for all. I mean, maybe if rent's due, you gotta do what you gotta do, but not for real. That is what SosMula's been up to for the last little bit. He seems to be doing well. He's probably going to be putting out a project this year, and I'm hoping he's going to continue to work with big names and find his own path. After all of this time, he has finally broken out of the shadow of Zilla Kami. Although if I had one little bit of advice that I would give to SosMula, it would be never do an interview again, because you already know that people are going to ask you about Zilla Kami over and over again, and it's going to be a repeat of the 6ix9ine thing. The only way that I would say he could get away with doing an interview is maybe having Ricky Hill sit beside him and kind of steer people away from asking those types of questions, because overall it's better to not have SosMula ever speak on that. Guys, you already know what his opinion on it is. He doesn't fuck with Zilla anymore. I know there's a weird little subset of people who are hoping that the two of them will work together again, but there's really no benefit for SosMula to ever work with Zilla again. City Morgue is over, sorry to tell you, but Sos is still thriving, and hopefully he continues to do so. And if you guys enjoy enjoyed this video and you want to see more, well, maybe I'll do another one in another 8 months. I mean, fuck it, why not? We can keep updating the SosMula story. I mean, after all, SosMula, you're the reason I even got to where I am now. Nah, I'm just kidding. The real reason is because of little RT. Thank God for that 8-year-old. But yeah, with that said, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know in the comments below. Shout out to Delete This Gang. Delete it, delete it, delete it. Take the video down because you're pissing me the fuck off. Subscribe to the channel because we now are almost to 29K. We lost a couple on the last one, but then immediately made them back. So welcome new people. I hope you guys enjoy my shit posting content. And with that said, oh yeah, A14 paid that guy back. So rare A14W. There you go. I said it, guys. Thanks. Bye. SosMula and A14 when?